We're live. Well, it's just me tonight. Dave is in Brazil, but I'm on with Goud, and he is running for Salt Lake County Clerk. And I'm interested to hear what he has to say. He got lined up through a friend of the show, Linda. She's real interested to hear what he has to say and everything else. And yeah, Dave is not here. He is in Brazil, down there with his wife visiting her family and not able to come on. But Goud, how do you say your last name?
It's Maragani.
Maragani. All right. Goud Maragani, and we'll be announcing his Facebook and his website and everything else throughout the show. And if you want to support him, we'll make sure we give out links to do that. But go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll go into motivations for you to run.
Okay, sure. So, my name is Goud, and I guess should I give a little bit of background?
Yeah. Give us your background, your credentials.
Yeah. So I'm a lawyer, and I've been practicing law now for almost 20 years. And I have a variety of experience in my background. I was a litigator for a while. I was in-house counsel at a federal agency, and now I am a compliance attorney at a tech company. And what I do in my job is I study complicated systems, I find potential failure points, and then I design the programs to prevent those failure points from happening and to make sure that we comply with the law. It's essentially, what I do is I try to prevent problems from happening before they happen. So it's kind of the perfect skill set for the clerk's office, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was also a JAG officer in the Army Reserves and the National Guard. I deployed twice, and during those deployments, I would advise my commanders about how to comply with the law in the most high stakes and high intensity environments. And I bring this up because it actually is relevant to the election system, because typically your election system is going at maybe like 30 miles an hour, just kind of plodding along. And then during election season, the activity spikes and you go up to 100 miles an hour, right? Because there's just a lot going on. It's when you have this high activity that you want to make sure that you have systems in place so people don't feel like they have to cut corners or take shortcuts or anything like that. And then finally, last year, I led the Salt Lake County GOP's Election Integrity Committee. And we did a deep dive into Salt Lake County's election system. We made GRAMA requests, which are public records requests. We interviewed current and former employees, and then we also took tours of the ballot processing facilities in Salt Lake County and Utah County. We then produced a report identifying various vulnerabilities of our election system, and then making suggestions for the state legislature, for the county clerks, and then for individuals on things that can be done to make the system better. We released that report on May 7th. I worked with the party. We released that report on May 7th. You can get a copy of it at my website. It's Goud, Goud, 4, clerk.com. And we did a press conference with it where we went through some of the highlights and took questions. So I encourage people to check it out. This is about as local as you can get. It's about our system. And I think people will find it illuminating. And it was after doing that I decided that there are these vulnerabilities, and most of them can be fixed with a new county clerk. And I figured, well, if not me, then who? And I decided to run.
Well, okay. So I'm adjusting the screen right now. I'm going to pull up your website real quick and show it. But now I like how you put that in the beginning, how most of the time the job's kind of just cruising along, but then during election season, it amps up and it becomes a huge deal, which is probably what you experience. I mean, the county clerk probably wears a whole bunch of hats all year long, but the one that is right out in the open under the spotlights is election season. It's right there. And that's an interesting, that's probably the the most interesting way I've ever heard it put that the county clerk does that. Because that's the only time anyone notices their county clerk, unless they're doing business on the county level that they have to deal with the clerk. But the average person, they get to know their, especially if they're interested in the election, whatever election, whether it's a big or small, that's when they get to know their county clerk.
Yeah.
When you did that investigation, how did Salt Lake and Utah County fare? Were they pretty good on the up and up?
Well, here's what I'll say is that there's a lot of areas that can be improved. And Salt Lake County, we didn't do a deep dive into Utah County's election system. Utah County does some things better than Salt Lake County does.
Uh-huh.
And it's led in some areas like security of ballot drop boxes is one example. It's actually, it has led the state in a way that Salt Lake County has not. But what I learned through the process is that it is really important that your county clerk is precise because we have so many close races in Salt Lake County. And just as an example, in the 2020 election, we had an at-large county council seat. So that's the entire county, decided by less than 1,200 votes. When you have races being that close, you don't have room for error because you can actually end up, inadvertently flipping a race if you're not doing things correctly. And so we did the one issue that we found that has raised some questions is that there were what I would call ballots that can't be attributed to registered voters.
Really?
At least, yeah. This was based on data that the clerk's office gave us. And so let me give a little background and then I'll explain how the calculation happened. But there are 3 categories of voter records in Utah and state of Utah. There are those that are publicly available. In Salt Lake County, that's about 60% of the voter rolls. Then there are private voter records, and private voter records are available to the government officials and to the parties, but the public cannot see them. And then there's withheld voter records, and withheld voter records are only available to government officials. The parties can't even see them. So we asked the Salt Lake County clerk for we asked the Salt Lake County clerk for a list of everybody who voted in the 2020 election. And they gave us a spreadsheet of all of the publicly available voter records. And then they said in there whether they voted and how they voted. Not who they voted for, but did you vote, and then did you vote for by mail, or did you vote in person, right? And so what we found is that we know that there were a total of 549,882 ballots cast in the 2020 general election. In that spreadsheet, it shows that there were 311,158 ballots cast by public voter records, right? We also knew the number of public records, private records, and withheld records on election day because the clerk gave us that data. So when you subtract the number of publicly available voters who voted from the total number of ballots cast, you get that there's 238,724 votes that needed to have been cast by private and withheld voters. Mm-hmm. The problem is that there were only 206,002 private and withheld voters at that time.
So what's the discrepancy? I'm not good at math in my head.
So it means that what this means is that there were 32,722 ballots that cannot be attributed to registered voters in this calculation. And it turns out into 116% turnout for the private and withheld voter record.
That's a big amount, 116%. That's a proud day for Salt Lake and Utah County showing up and really showing out twice, 16% of them.
Well, it's only Salt Lake County.
Oh,
And then-
only Salt Lake. Okay.
No, it's not like. And then we did remember the party has all the public voter records plus the private. So we also did the same analysis on that data set, and we came up with 14,336 excess votes. Again, these are votes that cannot be attributed to a registered voter. And I think it's 117% turnout rate for the private and withheld voter records. Now, this is what I'll say is that there might be a legitimate explanation for this data. It's based on data that the clerk's office gave us. There might be an explanation as to why there is this discrepancy, but I just haven't heard it. And what I tell people is, I think it's actually incumbent on a clerk, if you are given data like this, to either come forward, say why it's incorrect or the calculation's wrong, or say it's correct, but here's why it's not what you think it is, or at least make some effort to explain it. And I think it's problematic that the clerk's office has had the data for months and has never actually come forward with the data and has never explained what it means.
You're talking about the incumbent clerk.
I'm talking about the Salt Lake County Clerk's office. It's not just the clerk. It's the office itself hasn't come forward and answered the questions. The leadership.
Is that what's prompting you to run to challenge for the seat?
Well, this is not the only issue. Like I said, there may be a legitimate explanation for it.
Mm-hmm.
It's that there were a lot of different issues like this where I see vulnerabilities and they were not fixed before, and I don't see why they'll be fixed by the current management, because my opponent is the deputy clerk right now. So if these are things that she could have taken care of already, and she hasn't. I'll give you another example. I was talking about ballot drop boxes earlier, right? And in Salt Lake County, what they do is they send out a team of 2 to the ballot drop boxes. They did this in 2020. They'll go to the ballot drop box, they'll take out the ballots, pull the bag out, seal it with 2 zip ties. Then they'll drive that back to the clerk's office. When they get there, they weigh it. Then they write down the ballot drop box it came from, the weight, and the date. Okay. And I don't think that is sufficient chain of custody.
Not where it has that drive in between. They need to weigh it as soon as they get it.
Yeah, exactly.
And then a second party needs to weigh it and verify it when they get it there.
Yeah. So what I proposed is that I will have an app. This is based on what they do in Utah County. We'll have an app. We'll send out a team of 2. I'd like to have a Democrat and a Republican. I'd also like to have poll watchers. If poll watchers want to go and do a ride along or follow them, I think that's a great idea. They'll go to the ballot drop box. They'll pull out the ballots. They'll seal it with 2 zip ties. Same thing. Oh, I'm sorry. They'll go to the ballot drop box. They'll scan it with the app first. Now we have a timestamp telling you when they're opening the box. They'll pull out the bag of ballots, seal it with 2 zip ties, and then they'll weigh it right there on a fish scale, and they'll enter the weight into the app. When they drive back, we'll take another scan of the app. So now we know how long it's been driven around. We have the second timestamp. And then we'll take the bag and we'll weigh it on a digital scale, and we'll enter the weight. That should get us, based on what I've talked to people at Utah County, that should get us, the variance could be between 1 and 2 ballots, between the fish scale and the digital scale. At the end of, after the canvas, I will voluntarily release that spreadsheet showing you all that data so that people don't have to make grammar requests to get it anymore.
Yeah, that's an outstanding idea to do that, where you're preemptive on the release also. So that way you're completely transparent. If there's an issue, that's one less step for people who want to look into it that they have to research.
Yeah, exactly. There's been an issue where, I don't know if you know about HB 96. It passed in the last session.
Which one is that? Remind me.
That is the one that allows government to limit the number of free requests, free grammar requests that citizens can get. Have you heard about that?
Really?
Yeah. And actually what what is really interesting about it is that it was pushed by the County Clerks Association. I think it's called the Association of County Clerks. And they were complaining that they're getting too many grandma requests.
So essentially, the county clerk said, we have looked into our own dealings and we consider ourselves to be dealing correctly. We have done nothing wrong, so quit asking.
Well, I don't even think it has to be that you did something wrong. It's just citizens have a right to know what their government is doing.
Especially.
And it's really a problem. Look, I don't like that the county clerks went and asked for that and that the state legislature passed it. But I think some of the complaints just strike me as problematic when the county clerks aren't doing anything to prevent people from having to make the grandma request in the first place. If you're complaining about volume, one of the things you can do is proactively release data that you know people want. So as an example, the logs of ballot Dropbox chain of custody, I already know that people are going to want that after the election. So I'll just release it, preventing my office from having to deal with the grandma requests.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there are other examples which will make, there'll be some proposals that I'll release after the primary dealing more with this issue in terms of being more proactive and releasing data. I've also said that with grandma requests, because that HB 96, I really did not like that bill. Just to give a little bit more detail, it made it so that the county clerks, like local governments, I think state and local government can limit the number of free requests that you get if they think you're making too many requests. It exempted the mainstream media, or the establishment media from it, but it applies to bloggers, to podcasts, to the alternative media. And one of the things that was in this article that I read about it is that the mainstream media only makes 1% to 2% of grandma requests in the state, which should tell you that, the way I view it. So like I said, I have a litigation background. And one of the things I know is that you cannot get the truth by just talking to people in government. You have to actually, probably in general, but you actually you need to get documents. You need to be able to go further than that, right?
I was always under the assumption that our government officials were the most honest and trustworthy of the specimen that we can put forth to. I'm just kidding.
I know. I did an event recently where the person who spoke before me said, we should not trust our elected officials. We should always be asking questions and making grammar requests, et cetera. And when I got up, I said, I agree with that. And I'm running for office and I'm telling you, I will be trustworthy, but you should not believe me. You should verify everything for yourself. That is, as a citizen, that's your right.
Well, I also like that you're going to put the information out. You're just going to preemptively make, what should I say? Maybe bulk spreadsheets available immediately. And then if people want to dig in deeper, then they can come to you for deeper stuff. But the bulk stuff, like the count where there was 116% show up, which, hey, I mean, Salt Lake, that's got to be a record set. It's
116% for private and withheld records.
Yeah. And I know you explained all that. I'm not smart enough to understand everything you explained, but that's still 116%. That's showing up early and often right there. That's motivated.
Oh, no, but we don't know.
Yeah.
That's my point. I like, the way I approach this stuff is I try to be really open-minded, and because I believe that the people at the clerk's office are our neighbors, and there may be a totally legitimate explanation for this. There isn't a mechanism for them to be forced to explain what happened, right? I mean, I guess it could happen through some elected officials that hold them accountable or something like that, but they should come forward and explain what the data means. It's their data. We didn't manipulate it. We didn't do anything. This is literally a simple math problem that we were able to do. So they have the data. They should come forward and say what it means, and why it's either a good thing, a bad thing, or what they're going to do differently.
Mm-hmm. And I like your plan for weighing the ballots, taken right out of the box. That seems like such a simple procedure that should have been planned out ahead of time. It shouldn't be something that we wait until. Granted, I understand this last election, the 2020 election, was quite a bit different because COVID changed the rules, and a lot of states, quite frankly, just jumped in and changed the rules. And I'm not going to adjudicate whether it was right or wrong or fraud or not, but it was a new system that was put forward. So there's going to be shortcomings, mistakes made, and in some places, probably an overreach of security. But, things like that are going to happen regardless if you put forward a system that we're not used to. The mail-in ballots, the bulk mail-in ballots, which it sounds like they're here to stay, is, that's something that is going to have to be, we're going to have to come up with systems to verify that. And I don't know whether we'll have systems in place for a couple more elections to where we feel secure as we did with in-person voting.
Yeah, what I've said about this is that I think we have to. The way we win an election like this is we go out there and we tell people how we're going to build on the system we have and make it better. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of people that want to get rid of mail-in voting, but they haven't even won over the Republican side yet. And the reality of this is that there are pros and cons to every single method of voting that you have, right? And one of the pros for mail-in voting, just to give people a sense of this, is that apparently the number of women who started voting in Utah went up after we had universal mail-in voting.
We gave them the vote. That doesn't mean they have to use it. I don't know where you're going with it.
No. No. So what this? I heard this from a Republican elected official, and what she said is that the theory is that it was more Republican women who started voting because they tend to have bigger families and it was harder to get to the polling places.
Oh, yeah. And not to mention, that polling place day, a mom with 3 kids. Imagine that's a mom with 3 kids that's stay at home. Imagine if she has a job too. She might get home from work and have to make dinner and just be like, I'm not going to go vote. And also the mail-in voting, let's face it, it shows up to your door, and that is a one of the 3 reminders to vote that comes across.
Yeah.
So I'm not totally against mail-in voting. I do think that we need to maybe come up with a signature verification system, or I think we need to integrate more technology into our voting systems, which would be even better. But until we get there, we're with the mail-in voting, so we've got to take the steps to secure that as we have it.
Yeah. So a couple things here. The first is one of the areas I think we're lacking is that we should do a better job of educating voters about the pros and cons of each method of voting, right? A lot of times I would get questions about what is the safest form of voting. How come? And a lot of times what you notice is that elected officials in both parties say it's all the same. Just turn in your ballot however you want. It doesn't make a difference.
Now, I'm on your website right now, and I notice you've got a portion of that on your website.
Yeah. So, and what I've said is that before every election, I'm going to put out a notice telling people the pros and cons of each method of voting and tell you safest to least safe as I see it. And so just, for me at least, I think you would see the safest form of voting is showing your ID, going in person. Mm-hmm. Safe is taking your mail-in ballot to an in-person voting location and turning it into the receptacle past the poll workers.
And that means that ballot is under your control until it's in a secured location.
Yeah, exactly. Same. Then the third safest would be putting in a ballot drop box, and the
Now,
least safest would be putting it. Sorry, go ahead.
I talked to our county clerk out here, and she was saying that there is a chance that they may require the drop boxes to be put under like surveillance, like a security camera system.
Yeah.
And is there any further movement on that?
Yeah, let me get back to that. Hold on.
Okay, yeah.
So the
Sorry.
least safe would be putting it in the postal service, right? And so I think when people and what putting out a notice like that does is it means that voters can make the decision that is best for them. Knowing the full information now, instead of me just, because I think part of what happens, a lot of elected officials, they treat us like children by not giving us full information. I think when people have full information, they can make the decision that's best for them. I would prefer that they use one of those first three methods because I fully control whether it gets to my office once you've submitted it, either going in person, turning your mail-in ballot to an in-person voting location, or putting in a ballot drop box.
And that's not to say and you're not saying that postal workers are untrustworthy and have been known to commit acts of violence. No, you're just saying that you're entering them into another level of the chain of custody. And anytime you add another person to the chain of custody, it dilutes it. It's a colander.
Right, exactly. Like, I'm your clerk. I want to be able to put in place the proper security to protect your ballot once you submit it to me. I can't do that if you turn it into the postal service.
Yep.
That's all I'm saying. But you can take that risk if you think that is the best way for you to turn in your ballot. On the surveillance, in this last session, the state legislature mandated video surveillance for ballot drop boxes.
Okay.
That is, I know the one thing is I didn't see a deadline for when that has to happen. I was going to go back and look at it again to see if it's somewhere in there that I just didn't catch it, but it is now required. The ballot drop boxes be put under video surveillance.
Okay. So that did come through.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's, it's not a cheap means, but it's not overly expensive. It's not so cost prohibitive that it can't be done. I mean, I live out here in Tooele County, and there are some towns in Tooele County, if they were to put a drop box, that might be a level of pressure on the town where, I don't know, I thinking of like East Wendover or some of those places. They're really small towns, and we're talking tens of people live there. So it's something like that. But I would think in the average city or the average town, like say Grantsville or Tooele, where they have tens of thousands of people, I imagine that wouldn't be a drastic move to pay for and subsidize.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's also possible that there may be savings to be had if you get someone who will actually look at how the clerk is spending money. Just as an example.
Well, now you're speaking my language. Go on, good sir.
Okay. This is a little bit of a potential preview here, but in the 2020 general election, those little I voted stickers?
Yeah.
Okay, so in the 2020 general election, the Salt Lake County clerk spent almost $100,000 on I voted stickers.
Okay, repeat that again for everyone, for all the listeners.
So, yeah, the I voted sticker in the 2020 general election, the Salt Lake County clerk spent almost $100,000 on those stickers.
Go on.
Yeah. So it's my view that strikes me as being a little bit maybe outdated when, at least here, 90% of voters in Salt Lake County turn in they use a mail-in ballot, and they either submit it through the mail or through a ballot drop box. I suspect that most of those stickers probably end up in the garbage, and there might be things that the voters would rather see us spend money on instead of the stickers, right? For example, the videos on the ballot drop boxes. So
Yeah. Well, that's something to think about. So when most votes were turned in by mail, so either in a drop box at the post office or just at the county clerk's office where they walk in and dropped it off, instead of most votes being done where it was traditionally at a school or a church or whatever, not a church, but a school or the county building where you go in and stand in the booth and then they give you a sticker. How many of those stickers were left over?
that I don't know.
And where do I go to get a sticker machine to start up this business? Seriously, you work one time every 2 years and you make enough to live the rest of the time.
Yeah, and that's crazy because if you think about it too, like with inflation, just think about how much that's going to cost in the 2022 election and going forward. And like I said, I just think voters, there are things that are higher priority for voters than the stickers. And this is probably just one example of a budget item that we can cut or change as we, if I'm the clerk, again, this is what happens when you get fresh eyes in there, right? Because you can go in, you can look at things, you can kind of evaluate whether the current spending actually aligns with our current priorities. And I think,
yeah, 2018, the stickers were probably money well spent. Most of them probably got handed out.
Yeah.
2016, same. But 2020, the game was changed.
And the stickers are mailed as part of your mail-in ballot package.
Really?
I'm not saying that most of them probably got thrown out because you get all this stuff. You probably, it's part of what you just throw out after you vote.
Yeah, that's true. I wasn't registered to vote 2020. I know everyone freak out. If you've listened to this show for any minute, you know this. But I am registered to vote now. I may start voting, but up until now, I haven't put in the effort, which I should. I know. That's yes. I don't think the stickers really are that important. I agree with you there. I don't know, and that is a lot to think about. $100,000 is granted, it's not a huge expenditure compared to the rest of the spending of the county, but that's still, that's a substantial amount.
Well, 100,000 here, 100,000 there. You could keep on going, sure. And the reality is that, let's say that there is not something else to spend it on, right? Like we've got everything we need. We don't need that for something else. Then return it to the taxpayers.
Yeah.
Yeah. People are suffering right now because, gas is $5 a gallon, food is going up like crazy. Inflation is out of control. So if the government can not be part of that burden, I don't know why they wouldn't step up and start returning people's money back to them.
I agree. So were you a JAG officer? I'm drifting off subject for a minute. Just going to ask some personal questions. Were you a JAG officer for 96 ARCOM?
No.
Where was you a JAG officer at?
Different units.
Yeah. Was it National Guard or Army Reserve or
both?
Both.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, I can't remember all the units I've been in, but I was in like a legal operations detachment for a while. That was out in Virginia. I was in an engineer brigade that was in Texas for a while. Then I was in a civil air affairs battalion in Arkansas. I was also the group JAG for the 19th Special Forces group in Utah. So
okay, that's outstanding. And so you did go over to the Middle East a few times as a JAG officer. Now I've seen the TV show JAG. Ever jump in a fighter jet, kiss a hot girl at the end of the day, all that stuff?
No,
it's
not that. No, the thing is like I've deployed twice. It's more, like if you're a JAG officer, it's more about being a a force multiplier for your commander, helping
Yeah.
them be able to get the tools they need in a way that complies with the law so they're not getting in trouble later on. I'm really good at that. So like on my last deployment, I was able to get my commander a lot of tools that previous JAGs were not able to get, just because I understand how to advocate and persuade people, that this, because of my litigation background, I understand how to make it so people see like, yes, this is something that complies with the law and we can do it. And
Now
so I'm successful doing that.
I'm a veteran myself, and I was a scrounging officer. So it sounds like you were doing higher level of the scrounging, of rounding up the stuff needed to complete the job, where I would get my hands on maybe a couple extra rounds or MREs or toilet paper. You got the higher level stuff, and so yeah, I get where you're at.
Yeah, so that's kind of, and I mean, experience like that is again very helpful when you're talking about something like a clerk's office, because it is about thinking creatively, coming up with solutions. I understand, what I've told people is that, like I said, I led that election integrity committee, so I understand the election system. The proposals that I put forward are very realistic and we can do it under current law. But if we hit some sort of a roadblock, I understand how to identify the roadblock. It's either that we will, I'll find a way to overcome it. If I have to go to the state legislature to lobby for a law change, I'll do that. If I have to go to the county council to ask for more money, I'll do that. Or I'll find a different way to get to the end result that we want. Mm-hmm. And so and I think that my previous experience, both with the military and as a civilian lawyer, that's what I do. So I understand exactly that you've got to have strategy, you've got to understand your end goal, and then you need to understand your tools and tactics to be able to get there.
Good. I like it. Well, that's another thing. When you say the legislation was passed that made it so that people can, what did you call it? They can only request it 3 times. I forget the specific word.
Oh, it's discretionary. So if you make too many requests, well, let me say too many in quotations, your county clerk or local government official can say, I'm now limiting how many free requests you can get. So I think it's 1 every 10 days. So go ahead.
That restricts transparency in government.
Yeah.
That just sounds shocking to me. It just, and I'm not thinking that the county clerks are trying to hide something, because I'm sure they're getting inundated with requests for information that's kind of bogging them down and maybe making their day-to-day hard to meet up with. But still, you would think if you're going to get money from the general purse, that you want to be open. And I know I'm saying ridiculous stuff. No government has ever represented this, but you would think that they would want to. Well,
the way I see it is this. Your local government now claims all sorts of power over you, right? They can tell you how to breathe. They can tell you whether you get to open your business and make a living. So they're claiming massive amounts of power. Well, part of that is citizens get to come and ask you for information to make you transparent. And I think that's a cost of government. And
I agree.
Yeah. And I used to work in the federal government. And for a while I used to deal with FOIA appeals. It's part of my job, thankfully not the whole thing. It's a very difficult thing to deal with, but it's part of my job. And what I found is that when we would actually work with the requesters, because I would deal with the appeal, so they go through that first FOIA, Freedom of Information Act, for people who don't know, officer, they'd make a request, it would get denied on some, either partially or fully, they would appeal it, and I would deal with it.
So you were the guy after they were already frustrated, yep, after they had went and probably gained some more knowledge to tighten up their request. Oh,
But
Oh,
yeah, but that's exactly the point, though, is that then I would work with them because sometimes you talk to them, you can get them to narrow the request. It's not always lawyers making the request, so they don't know that you got to make it a little bit more narrow. What are you actually looking for? Let's get you that thing so we can cut the cost down of this. We can make it so it's responsive to you, but it's not going to cost as much money and it's more affordable. And what I found is when you actually facilitate the request like that, you end up with a citizen who is much happier at the end of the day.
oh yeah.
Yeah. And that's what I've told people I will do when I'm the clerk. The office will then start facilitating the grammar requests. We will, if we think this is really too broad and it's going to cost a ton of money, we'll call you up and be like, hey, tell me what you want. What is it you're trying to get to? And then let's work on this and try to get you what you need. I will try to get this to low or no cost as much as I can. It's easier if it's something that's within my office versus if I have to go to like IT or something, which is not something I would control. But I think with that type of a process, citizens will be a lot happier, and we can, we'll be able to still get you what it is you're looking for at a lower cost than what's going on right now, and less of the adversarial portion of it, right?
Yeah. Oh, and that's the big thing is when your government starts feeling like an adversary, it feels like there's no way out. You feel hostage. And if an officer of the government can make you feel included in the process, it even if there is a blow, it lessens that blow.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's also that when government is not being transparent, people start to ask questions and they start to have doubts whether or not there's justification for it.
We don't need to talk about Nixon tonight. He gets brought up way too often on this show.
Well, yeah, so I think it is better for government to be as transparent as possible. And, I've worked in situations where we're dealing with, classified information and stuff like that. What the clerk is dealing with is not classified. Now, there are reasons why you wouldn't release people's, like who they voted for. You may not, I don't know if you, yeah, there's things you wouldn't release because of privacy, right? I understand that. But if it's the clerk and employees emailing, unless there is some citizen data in there, there's a lot more that could probably be released without it being such an adversarial process like what it seems to be right now.
I agree. Now, not to make your vocation go extinct, but would it be interesting to see in this modern day and age where governments can become, through the use of technology, kind of transparent in the beginning, and then the FOIA request will only be to narrow down, maybe to see if we need to get some confidential information released. But up till that point, it's open and out there. And I often wonder how we can, not that I know anything about technology, I just hear that it's magical, and you and I are talking from 40 miles away from each other and it's instantaneous, and then we're sharing it all over the world all at once. But is there any way that maybe technology can be brought in to interface that? I understand it wouldn't be an overnight thing, but
yeah, that is something that I want to look at a little bit more, is whether we could actually start posting historical grammar responses to grammar requests on the website in some sort of a database, because that could also cut down on the number of requests we get, especially if we're seeing kind of similar requests keep popping up, right? Because then we could say, look, we've already responded to this. You can go here and get what you need. Over time, I think you'd actually end up with a database of a lot of documents.
And you'd save yourself so much time. You'd have a form letter that the letter would come in, you'd open it up, you'd fold up your form letter that says, if you go to www.ialreadyshowedittoyou.com, mail it back to them, and then, they could follow the step-by-step to get right there. That'd save the office a lot of time.
Yeah, exactly. And then that's what I'm saying is I guess as an extension of what I was saying earlier, is that some of the complaints about the burden of having to deal with grammar requests, I think there's more they could do to reduce that burden, and they haven't done it. So don't complain about it if you're not actually going to take steps to make it so that people don't need to make those requests.
Yeah. Well, I have to say, I don't know who you're running against, but I have to say, you've shown up to this run prepared. I'm going to flash your website back on screen real quick, because I just kind of want to just talk about the website real quick and point out some different things that I'm noticing on it that are that I would say are exceptional. So you got Goud for County Clerk. So it's to go to his website. It's GOUD4CLERK.com. You've got home, you've got voting machines. We click on that. He's got an explanation here about the voting machines. Are these the voting machines used universally in Utah, or does Utah go county by county?
It goes county by county, but the proposal is it doesn't matter what kind of machines you're using. So just to give a little bit of background, I heard from IT professionals, both Democrat and Republican, who had concerns about the security of the machines that are used to count your votes, and those are called tabulators. A more recent example, and I don't know if people know about this, but in the primary election in Georgia, there is a race where there were 3 Democrats running against each other. Okay, in the results put out by the tabulator, candidate A was first place, candidate B was second place, and candidate C was third place. Candidate A, the first place guy, complained saying there was some issue. Candidate C found some discrepancies. She found that she got 0 votes in multiple precincts, which seemed odd. Mm-hmm. The clerk agreed to do a hand count of the ballots. When they did the hand count, candidate C ended up in first place, candidate B stayed in second place, and candidate A went into third place. Okay.
Oh my God. So, and that doesn't just mean that it'd have to be nefarious. That could also be a mechanical malfunction in the equipment. There could be so many reasons. It's not that, some guy's twisting their mustache, but yeah, if there's an issue like that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think if they want to continue to use these tabulators or whatever, I think they need to figure out a way of redundancy where we have 2 different systems that double check themselves, and at least call if we need a red flag.
Well, so this is my proposal, is that for every race, every election, we'll pick one race and we will do a hand count of that race.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
The benefit of the hand count is that you can have poll watchers. They can watch how we do it. They can make sure they're comfortable with the process and that they're comfortable with the results. We'll compare that hand count to what comes out of the tabulator. And now if it matches, we're good for that election. If it doesn't match, then it's my job as the county clerk to go back and figure out what happened, to report that to the public, and then based on what happened, I would propose a way forward. I don't like to judge it because I don't know, like to your point, I don't know what the issue would be if there's a problem, right? It could be mechanical, it could be a human error, but based on that, I'll propose a way forward. We'll pick that race that we're going to do the hand count for randomly.
You could make a game show out of it. Like people show up, you spin a wheel, they guess how much money you spent on stickers that year. The person closest to not go over gets to run down, spin another wheel. The closest to 100 gets to move to the lightning round. In the lightning round, they do something else government-wise, and then the winner of that gets to draw out of the hat which race gets to have the hand count. It could be a fun time.
I guess that's true. It could make it really fun.
I will wear a plaid suit with a long microphone. I'll be the announcer gladly.
Great. I appreciate that. You got to come in person to Salt Lake.
Oh, definitely. I'll be there. And my suit will put every used car salesman suit to shame.
So yeah, no. So I made a joke about that yesterday at an event because I was like, well, maybe we could do like have a little fun with it. You know, all the poll watchers, we get everyone together. We could draw it out of a bowl just before we're going to start. But there are different ways that we can do it. We can either do it with like that, with the poll watchers doing it. We could go have a different elected official do it. Maybe the county auditor could pick it out. But we don't want to do it ahead of time, right? Because then you can game the system. We want to do it just before we're going to start.
Yeah, so, you want to do it like the day of. The you know, and the thing we're counting is, and then you have the two people that are running, the person who won and the person who lost, standing right there to verify, you know, whatever else. I mean, you can have, or the two, maybe the two party seats standing right there. You know, there's ways you could control it, and that's an excellent way to verify, and you make it all public and people can come and make an event out of it.
Yeah. You know, because what I have found that this proposal is something that voters like a lot. Because initially people were complaining about specific brands of machines. But what I would say to them is, okay, well, let's say we change the brand. Does that make you feel better about the machine itself? But when you kind of delved into it, it turns out that actually did not make people feel better. The issue is that they don't understand what the machine is doing. There's not an easy way to look at it and verify it. And I think the key is your election system has to be accessible to everybody, just to be able, with your eyes and without needing some special training in order to be able to figure out what's going on.
Oh, we're having some issues with our Zoom. So everyone, our cameras just went way goofy, but anyways, we'll just keep going. Maybe it'll correct itself. Maybe it won't. I'll stop the video for a second and then bring it back up. Okay. Mine's good. No, I agree. Okay. Start your video again real quick, Goud. Okay. I agree. And then I don't know how many tabulation machines a county like Salt Lake would have, whether it'd have multiple or whatever, but let's say you draw from a machine and that count comes up wrong. That may trigger you to where you say, okay, we've got to pull another group that this machine tabulated and do a verification. And then you can do that and say, okay, you know, you can research that to the end to see if it's okay. But I think it's an excellent idea. I really do. Man. We're having some technical difficulties in here right now, folks, in the studio. So the cameras are looking a little goofy, but that's okay. Anyways, so let's round this out. We're coming up on an hour. Finish out this spiel on kind of what you're going to do as the county clerk, what changes you'd like to see made, maybe stuff outside of the election that you kind of want to throw some efforts into.
Yeah. So let's see. So yeah, you can tell the biggest issue that I hear about are elections for sure. I will say that there are improvements I think that could be made throughout the different divisions of the clerk's office. So people understand there's the election division, there is marriages and passports, and then there's the third division is a council clerk, and the council clerk is a secretary to the county council, right? And I'll tell you, that's an area, and this will get back to my point about kind of fresh eyes and how that really helps a lot to find ways to improve that haven't been done yet. This is a little bit of a potential preview. So the council clerk, what they do is they take notes of the county council meetings or minutes, and then they post them onto a website. It's actually it's well done. It's convenient. The problem is that they don't actually post the final version. The final, in order to be final, it has to be signed by the deputy clerk and the chairman of the county council. the versions that they have been posting are unsigned versions. And what that means is that if you want to get the final version, you have to make a grammar request. Going back to my point about then what happens is they complain about the burden of the grammar request, but you're not doing something. This is a great example, an easy thing to do to reduce that burden and to make it so much easier on citizens. And so that is something that I will do.
Yeah, honestly, that's getting ahead and freeing up your office.
Yep.
That's okay. That's outstanding. And the county clerk, yeah, I forgot the county clerk is also where you go to do the marriage licenses. And I should know this. I'm an ordained minister too. So I've turned them in there, but, that's where you go. What's that?
That you wear a lot of hats.
I do. I really do. And a Tooele hat tonight, brand new one. There's a lot to it. And the more you can free up, the more you can make that job transparent. I think that'll make your office run smoother. I imagine all the personnel in your office will be thankful for that. You know,
I think so.
Yeah.
Look, they have a lot of very good employees there. They're very experienced, a lot of experience, a lot of smart people that care about their jobs. I would be new leadership in there, but I value the experience that they have. And I think with new leadership, we can do a lot of really great things with that clerk's office by making it more transparent, by going through all the different things the clerk's office does and finding ways to improve it. I've just given you, even like the smallest things can make a huge improvement. From that example of a council clerk beginning to post minutes that are finalized and signed, it may seem like a small thing, but there are people out there that have had to make grammar requests because the final versions are not on the website, and they're going to be a lot happier when we're doing this the right way.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah, so, imagine that's such a streamline.
Yeah. And everything, that's how I view it is, you know, I come out of the grassroots. Like I told, I didn't have an intention of running for office. This just happened because I ran that election integrity committee. I see a problem and I know that I can fix it with my skill set. And so I want this to be an office that's responsive to normal citizens and that is actually, you know, understanding their needs and making sure that they're being met. So if it's on the elections, we're improving the security and continuously improving the security, which is what people want to see. And we're being as transparent as possible in the examples I gave. Plus, you know, we're going to have much better poll watching, where right now, I think a lot of people poll watch, but you go there, they don't know when they're going to do different things. They'll take when I went, they actually took a dinner break and they didn't know when they would come back from the dinner break. And I find that to be very disrespectful to people who take time away from family, time off of work to come and poll watch. So what I've said is, look, at least 2 weeks before we process any ballots, I'm going to put out the full schedule telling you when we will engage in different activities, when we will take breaks. And that way, now you can plan ahead with your work, with your family. You can come in and poll watch, because I want more poll watchers, and I want more poll watchers of all political persuasions, because I think there's value to it from a transparency perspective, and also because everybody sees things differently. And you may see an improvement that we could make, and I want to hear it. Right? Like, and the only way I can do that is if you're able to come to the office and be a part of the process.
Yeah. How would it be if we had an election where both sides walked away and go, yeah, I was right?
Yes.
We haven't had one of those in a very long time.
Exactly.
When was the last time? I think 18, gosh, seriously, a very long time.
It has been a long time. That's exactly what I've said is, you know, because each side will say, oh, the other side always complains. But, you know, just more recently, 2016, Trump won. The Democrats said it was Russia stole it. 2020, Biden wins, and the Republicans say Biden stole it. And I'm not judging either. What I'm saying is
we can go back further than that. There was contentious counties under both Obama wins. Of course, remember hanging Chads under Bush. I mean, you can go back. What was it? The 1887 election where, I mean, they took an extra 5 months. It changed the way elections are held forever.
Yeah.
You know?
And so I want to get this so that our election system is neutral. And part of that, I want it to be neutrally run. I want people to be able to come in and verify it, because at the end of the day, I want to get to what you're saying. You're not going to blame the election system anymore, because you see it is being run properly and it's not influencing it. Instead, you'll blame your candidate that lost. I think we can all then be happier, because then you'll be like, okay, you know what? He or she didn't win. We'll try.
Blame your candidate, your party, or your neighbor.
Exactly.
The American way.
Exactly.
But no, all right. And this is one thing I want to put out a quick message. When you're voting there's a couple of elections when you're voting for a working job. When you're voting for a politician, we all know what they do. They sit and talk and steal your money. But the sheriff, that's a working job. Your county clerk is a working job. The dog catcher, if it's an elected position, is a working job, And so I think those are some of the most important ones where you're voting for, an actual working person, I don't want to say labor, but you're voting for an office holder that completes a task, and that's a good thing. And we have 2 comments, if you don't mind, if I run through them real quick. We've got Shannon says, Shannon, she says, "We love you, Goud. We need you to win this race." Yes, Shannon. And then Maston says hi.
Yeah. Hi back.
Yeah. But this is fantastic. I like this. And imagine when you win, you'll get in there, make those changes, and set an example for the rest of the nation. Peace is restored. We become one nation at whole again, and the threats and that of civil war go away. So let's make you win.
Thanks. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I like it. Everyone, thanks for joining us. That is Goud for Clerk, GOUD, the number 4 CLERK.com. Go there, check it out. Look into his stuff. Throw him support. You can send him messages there. And, if you have an email or a comment or question, if you're wondering, honest cat, real dude. Thank you very much, Goud.
No, thanks a lot, Jared.
Hey, and all right, everyone. I'll be back next Friday. Dave might be, but we'll see you then. All right, we're off.
All right, cool.
Hey,
thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for coming on. This was a great interview. And I do enjoy talking to county clerks because I'm learning a lot. I think they're the grease that makes everything run in everything the county does, and I don't think they get it. They're the unsung hero of the county. Always are. And I think that's real great. I shared this video with you to your messenger, so you can pull it up there, share it wherever you need to, talk about it and everything else. And we'll have to meet up in person, and chat again.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. I like it. Well, you have a wonderful night, and we'll talk to you real soon, man.
You too. Thanks a lot.
Anytime you need to get a message out or anything else, just shoot me a message and we'll arrange. We can throw you on generally any given day of the week.
Oh, perfect. All right, thanks a lot. I appreciate it, Jared.
You bet. You have a good one, Goud.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.